I failed the first test I ever took in college. It was a math test, so in hindsight, I shouldn't have been so surprised. Now, I've done poorly on tests before. I'm not a perfect person. However, I'm usually able to laugh it off. I've always held the belief that one test does not determine a person's intelligence. I also knew that if I didn't laugh it off, I would probably cry. However, this was different. Not only was this my first test in college ever, it was one of 3 that I had in that class, and that was my grade for the entire semester. On the way back to my dorm, I was going through the usual self-deprecating humor that follows me after a bad test. Yet my mind began to race as I thought of the consequences of what had just occurred. By the time I entered my room, I was in full panic mode. What if I can't bring my grade up? I'm terrible at math. What if I do badly on all the other tests? If I don't do well in this class, my GPA will go down, and it's so hard to get that back up. I could get kicked out of the theater program if my GPA gets too low. I mean, I know I'm not good at math, but I can figure out that much. Then what'll I do? Any other major programs that I would even consider transferring to won't take me if my GPA is that low. I may have to drop out. In the midst of all these worst-case scenarios running through my head, I'd sat down on the floor and began to sob. I felt so hopeless, and I just didn't know what to do. I began to try and collect myself and find the root of why I was so upset when certain memories popped into my head. My parents talking to other parents about all my accomplishments, my aunts and uncles asking me when they were going to see me on Broadway, my classmates arguing about whose team I should be on during a review game before a test, my teachers telling me that they knew I would do great things. All of a sudden, the reason I was so upset became clear to me. I didn't want to disappoint the people I love. Having to go back to my hometown and tell these people who care about me that I failed was not something I wanted to deal with. Watching their faces fall with a mixture of pity and disappointment has always been one of my greatest fears. I don't want your pity. I don't want to disappoint you, and I don't want you to feel bad about paying me an innocent compliment. What I do want you to do is think. Think about how much of an impact your words have on people. Everyone always talks about the impact of negative words, but what about words that are seemingly positive? At times like these, I feel this enormous amount of pressure because it feels like all of these people not only want me to succeed, but expect me to. I cannot possibly be the only person who feels this way. The New York Times published the results of a survey of 200,000 college freshmen, and only 52% felt that their emotional health was above average, as opposed to 64% in 1985. We are feeling the pressure to succeed, and while there may be other factors surrounding these numbers, is it crazy to think that maybe our society has an issue with success? That we might be so obsessed with perfection that we forget that humans make mistakes? I passed that math class, by the way. My GPA is still good, and I'm on track to graduate on time. Failing a few times hasn't ruined my life, but that fear of having to go home and tell my loved ones that I wasn't good enough hasn't gone away. Honestly, I don't think it ever will.